ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you back to another edition of Foreclosurepedia Podcast. Foreclosurepedia Podcast, presentation of the Foreclosurepedia Radio Network, which premieres each Sunday evening at 2300 hours. Folks, it's been a busy week. It's been a while since I put a podcast together as well. I've been doing a lot of work, a lot of consulting and such, and honestly just haven't had time. But something here real recently came up on the radar. Came up on the radar about 2 weeks ago that that has deeply troubled me. This has deeply troubled me, not just as a contractor, not just as a citizen of the United States of America, but also as a veteran of the United States Armed Forces. A company known as A2Z Field Services, whom I actually did some work for in the past, and I believe, excuse me, we're still on their books. Miss Mills is, I don't own the company. And Foreclosurepedia, the website is obviously a different entity than Foreclosurepedia, the company. And as usual, looks like A2Z's site isn't coming up. Seems they've been having a lot of server maintenance issues. Seems like about every 2 to 3 days. That's immaterial. What I want to talk to you about is A2Z's vendor fraud policy. About 2 weeks ago, this policy, this vendor fraud policy, was issued as a blanket document in a knee-jerk reaction, in my opinion, to a request for a background check being sent out to some contractors, wherein the contractors were named as employees. And I cannot opine as to why A2Z or whom at A2Z sent this out, but this went out to everybody. I actually issued my protest in writing and via telephone calls to A2Z Field Services, to their legal counsel. Now, I do not know if that's their general counsel or just somebody they happen to have used at the time. Her name is Sarah Lee, and we actually had about an hour, half an hour to an hour long discussion about this. I also issued my concerns directly to the United States Housing Department of Housing and Urban Development, and I also issued my current concerns to the United States Attorney General's office. I went further than that, though. I issued a copy of this and my concerns forthwith to the ACLU, which is the American Civil Liberties Union, and the NAACP. I also issued my concerns to multiple gay and lesbian organizations throughout the United States. Why did I do all this? Why can such an innocuous document, at first blush, a vendor fraud policy, generate such a concern by somebody like me? Well, what I want to do is I want to come to page 2, and the first thing I want to draw your attention to is apparently this was revised on the 20th of April in 2012. The second page has a completely different label. You see that? This is called the A2Z Field Services Fraud Policy, and it was issued in June 2013. Now I want you to pay very close attention here. I want you to look at that. A2Z Field Services Vendor Fraud Policy. This doesn't say John Doe Incorporated's fraud policy. This does not say Jane Doe's company's vendor fraud policy. This says the A2Z Field Services Vendor Fraud Policy. And I want to go down here. I acknowledge that I read, understood, and agreed to abide by the A2Z fraud policy. I understand that failure to do so may lead to disciplinary action up to and including termination, and may also subject me to civil and criminal penalties under state law. So I'm going to get right into that page right there. We don't work as an employee, A to Z. Now, I don't care what direction you want to go. We're not your employees. However, if you want us to be your employees, we will be more than happy to do that, especially with Obamacare coming up. Because let me tell you, I'm getting older. I'm getting older and I could really use the insurance. I have children. They could use the insurance. You know what? I need PTO, paid time off. I actually need to be paid prevailing wage. And I need other ancillary fringe benefits. I need a 401k. So what A to Z needs to do immediately is figure out whether or not contractors are employees. Let's talk about this just for a minute, because I actually ran across an article not too long ago. This is from out of Utah. Very good friend of mine out there. Well, I'm not going to mention your name. Don't worry, brother. Had referred me to this because Foreclosurepedia is actually, we are the only media source out there right now that is attempting to inform people, to bring the information to you, the contractors, and to the American public about what is going on in the seedy underbelly of the property preservation industry. Let's talk about this for a moment. Lawsuit filed against construction companies mislabeling workers. Now, this is from KSL.com in Utah. I'll leave it up here a couple of seconds so you can get enough information, go research it. I specifically, on my podcast screencast, I don't bring it up high enough up in there to get the to get the web address in the bar. But everybody has known for at least 2 decades what's been going on in this industry. Everybody. To me, that's not just an opinion. If you look across the board at the statistics and the verbiage, a lot of people think these companies just cook up a contract and they all look similar, so they must be boilerplate and copied from each other. They're not. Lawyers sit down and study this stuff. So A to Z needs to first and foremost determine whether or not contractors are employees. But that's really not even what really got under my skin. When I joined the United States Armed Forces, when I was in the United States Navy, I took an oath. I took an oath as an enlisted man to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States against enemies both foreign and domestic. Uphold the Constitution. There's a portion of that that is attached thereto of the Constitution, which is known as the Bill of Rights. Apparently not a single company in the property preservation industry has ever heard of the Bill of Rights. There's a couple of rights in there that I'm rather concerned about. The First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment, and the 14th Amendment. So let's actually talk about those a little bit this evening. And I want to draw your attention immediately and forthwith up here. Other irregularities. Irregularities concerning a vendor's moral, ethical, or behavioral conduct. Now here's my problem. Who in God's name does A to Z Field Services think they are as a private corporation to dictate what morals are? I actually spoke with the lawyer about this, Miss Lee, and she didn't want to opine upon it at all. I said, Miss Lee, we have a 1099 contractor whom is a homosexual. This contractor is also employed in the capacity as a contractor directly to A to Z Field Services. I said, can you tell me whether or not A to Z Field Services finds homosexuality to be moral? Couldn't get an answer. Couldn't get an answer. Nothing new there, though. None of these companies are ever going to answer anything meaningful. They'd rather be under the bus than in front of the bus. True sign of leadership, in my opinion. So, what we are to become as contractors now are confidential informants, snitches. Now, at least if I become a confidential informant for a government agency, there's going to be some benefit, whether I'm put into witness protection, whether I'm moved and given a far more plus job, something goes away, I'm going to receive some kind of benefit. I don't get any benefit here. So, A to Z, first and foremost, wants to determine and dictate what the morals are. You know, I'd also ask Miss Lee whether or not this, specifically, the moral statement dealt with religion. You know, I'm rather concerned because if A to Z, for example, has a problem with Muslims, with Islam perhaps, do they perhaps hate Catholics? Jews? Perhaps they hate Jews. You know, I really don't know. Do you know why I do not know? Because A to Z Field Services, freely, willingly, and with overt intention, has refused to issue a public statement to clarify this. What A to Z Field Services has done, what they have done, after I reached out to them and threatened to sue under 42 U.S.C. 1983 to make it a civil rights complaint, after I reached out to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, they chose to make this a voluntary document. But you see, there's no difference. There really is no difference because this is a very slippery slope. To allow a private corporation to dictate and mandate the actions of independent contractors with specificity to what occurs in their own private lives behind closed doors is repugnant to the Constitution. Now let's talk a little bit more here because this is nothing. I'm not even going to talk about ethical. I don't think A to Z Field Services is in any position to determine what is and is not ethical after this document has been issued. I want to come down here a little bit. There's a term I hear quite a lot. I actually have some law enforcement friends, speak with them on the weekends and such. And one of the terms they use all the time is interrogations. If you look right down here, A to Z Field Services now feels like it has the legal right to conduct interrogations. I like that. Hey, you know, I will give them credit on this. They must have a huge set of brass balls. Make no mistake of that. I guess they're going to put us in a room and they're going to lock the door with the one-way mirror. They're going to keep the light on all the time. They're going to wake us up at random hours. Perhaps they're going to undress us and put our undergarments upon our head and throw cold water at us, chain us to the floor and bring in German shepherds. Perhaps they're going to play loud music at all hours of the day and night. Perhaps waterboarding is coming in now. I don't know. Do you know why? Because A to Z Field Services has not issued a public statement describing why they feel like they have the legal right to interrogate any independent contractor and precisely what the word interrogations means. This next one here, I support my commander-in-chief no matter what party my commander-in-chief may be. I served at a very interesting time. I performed very interesting services. One law I do not agree with is the Patriot Act. I do not believe that the United States government has the legal right to surreptitiously kick in my door, to seize my children, to seize my wife, to seize my neighbors, to seize my mail, to place video cameras throughout my house, to place microphones anywhere that they wish, and to spirit away in the dead of the night my personal possessions. A2Z Field Services does. A2Z Field Services in this section right here, I have never seen the audacity in my 40-plus years of being on this earth of any private corporation ever assigning itself police powers. I want you to listen to this, and I want you to listen to their terminology. Members of the investigation unit. I mean, who in the hell do these people think they are? The investigation unit. They will have free and unrestricted access to all company records, the authority to examine, copy, and remove anything they want. This is madness. This is madness. But it goes on. It goes on. They can do this whether or not you are present without a warrant. You have no legal rights. Now, I want to stress this. The Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA of the United States of America, does not have the legal right to do this to you domestically. If the FBI, the NSA, or anybody else wants to do this domestically, they must go in front of a FISA or other similarly situated court. A2Z feels like they don't have to. And A2Z, by and through its statement, can only be construed that it has awarded itself this power, this police action power, by and through the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development. This is very, very dangerous. This type of precedent, when left unchecked and unchallenged, will turn the United States upside down. The Constitution of the United States will be left meaningless. In my personal and humble opinion, whomever drafted this document, and Miss Lee told me she did not authorize the distribution of this document, and she would neither confirm nor deny whether or not she was the author, but whoever is the author of this document, and whoever was directly responsible for emailing this to the contractors, should be charged. They should be charged by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, and they should be brought in front of a United States District Court and charged and convicted accordingly. This document purports to violate a half-dozen civil rights of United States citizens, and it doesn't stop there. It does not stop there. Let me talk to you a little bit more. The vendor or other complainant may remain anonymous. All inquiries concerning the activity under the investigation from the suspected individual, his or her attorney or representative, or any other inquirer should be directed to the vendor manager. No information concerning the status of an investigation will be given out. The proper response to any inquiry is, I am not at liberty to discuss this matter. This is very dangerous because A2Z Field Services, in essence, is instructing individuals that if you know crimes are going on, you are not to discuss them. There's no other way to interpret that. I do not know. I do not know who these people think they are. You know, at one point in time, I had a lot of respect for A2Z Field Services. I did. This is when they had the Tennessee contract. When that contract went down to Georgia, it went completely into the shitter. They cut the prices across the board. Now, if you screw up at all, they want all kinds of back billing. But in addition, A2Z Field Services time and time again has attempted to extract free labor from independent contractors. I have their statements, I have their records, stating that they need to perform free services and that those services are at the direction of a, quote, female HUD employee, end quote, in Georgia. At a recent training session down there, A2Z, buying through their training man has ordered and instructed that the word mold never be used again upon any document, and that no sign using the word mold be affixed to any residence. I don't, I just really do not know. I am gravely concerned. This document, you go to our website here, it's the OpEd, A2Z Field Services and the Moral Quandary. You can read the whole document. This comes directly from A2Z Field Services. This thing reads like the Patriot Act, folks. It really does. In essence, it wants to go ahead, I presume, to determine who is allowed to think what, to do what, and to perform what. I'm concerned. I am concerned as a United States citizen, and I am concerned for the very freedom and liberties that I fought for to defend. And I'm concerned for the United States Constitution in and of itself. A2Z Field Services, in my humble opinion, should get in front of this thing and remove the voluntary provision. Now, A2Z Field Services, because I stated to that lawyer, the only way I am not going to file a lawsuit is if it is put in there that if we do not accept this document, even though it's voluntary, that is not going to impact any work. But here's the kicker to that. Here's the kicker. There's no way to measure that. They know that. I know that. But the people who really need to come into play here is the United States Attorney General's office, because the delegation of police powers to a private corporation on domestic soil is a very dangerous, messy, and ugly business. It borders on the violation of the Posse Comitatus Act, in my opinion. If A2Z Field Services ever finds it necessary to step foot on my land in the state of Tennessee, we have far different laws, rules, and regulations down here about that. I'd like other contractors, if you're similarly dismayed about this document, to reach out, not just to me. Reach out to your congressmen, to your senators. Reach out to the United States Attorney General's office. Reach out directly to the director of the M&M at HUD, Craig Carnes, in Atlanta, Georgia. Reach out to the government technical representative. Reach out to the HUD office, the Inspector General, and tell them that you are completely concerned with this document. There is just simply no other way to put this. This is blasphemy. I'd like to thank you all for tuning in to another edition of Foreclosurepedia podcast. If you ever have any questions, comments, or concerns, give me a shout out. COO@foreclosurepedia.org. You can catch us on Twitter at #Foreclosurepedia or on the Google Plus page, Foreclosurepedia. Thank you and have a good evening.